Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my least favorite video of the year, the Premier League predictions video. I hate this video. I hate this concept. As a concept, I absolutely hate it. Predicting things. There's just so much room to embarrass myself here. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to do that again this season. Now, I've gone back and forth with a lot of stuff that I'm about to say. Even now, as the camera's on and I'm recording myself, I can't say I'm absolutely positive about everything I'm saying. I still have so much doubt in my mind, and it's coupled by the fact, right, that there's still almost a month left of the transfer window, and it looks like a lot of these sides still have business to do. But with the Premier League starting this weekend, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get this over with. I don't want to be here just as much as you guys don't, but we have to do it. We have to do it. Here in front of you guys, we have the Premier League table in the form of a tier list. Because let's be real, it wouldn't be a Lyes video if it wasn't a tier list. But let's start from 20th to 18th. And to start this off, right, I'm going to say this. I think this year's relegation battle is going to be a lot more tasty than it's been the last few seasons. The last 2 years, I almost feel like the relegation battle is a formality before ball is even kicked. The 3 teams that came up, the 3 teams that go right back down. And rinse and repeat. But I do feel like this year there is room to change that. And I think I'm actually looking at like a group of 5 teams that I think could potentially go down this season. Like 5 sides I really give a legitimate chance, maybe even 6, that are really going to be up against it this year. I'm going to start at 20th, and I'm going to go for Leeds. Now, Leeds last season were incredible in the championship, right? They were probably the best team by a good distance, although shout out to Burnley as well too. But Leeds were that side in the championship last year. And they were that side pretty impressively because the year before that, they had lost in agonizing fashion in the what's called the playoff final. And you almost always feel that when a team loses that playoff final, then next year it almost feels like everything kind of falls apart. But no, Leeds held it together and they managed to go up at the second attempt. But going into the Premier League this season, I look at the squad they're coming up with, and I look at the business that they're doing, and I look at the manager at the helm, and everything to me screams championship. It screams championship. I don't think there's enough attacking quality in this side to really make an impression in this league. I don't think they've recruited well enough in terms of adding quality again that can really compete in this league. And then I look at Daniel Farke, and for God's sake, I mean, Leeds didn't want him. Leeds genuinely played with the thought of letting him go before they went up to the Premier League. And there's a simple reason for that. Every time Daniel Farke has been in the Premier League, he has struggled to keep teams up. And I say struggle, that's being even kind. He's failed to do so at every attempt. He is a championship specialist. He is the best, or one of the best, at bringing teams up. I almost feel like Neil Warnock towards the end of his career was similar, right? He's very good at bringing teams up, but maintaining them in that position, maybe you got to go look for someone else. So unfortunately for Leeds, I just don't think there's enough there. And I do have them finishing at the current moment in 20th. Now, like I said, 17th, 16th to 20th is difficult, right? It's really, really difficult. But the second team I have going down is a side that have been ever present in the Premier League ever since they came up. But I do look at their summer, and it is one of the most devastating summers I have seen a team have in a while, and that's Brentford. I have Brentford finishing in 19th. And the simple reason for that is I just don't see how a club can lose a manager, and not just any manager, a manager that in relative to Brentford is a dynastic manager. Thomas Frank was a manager that changed Brentford. He's a manager that influenced that club so much. His fingerprints are all over it. They lost him. They lost their best player. They're on the verge of losing their best goal scorer, and they lost their captain. So we're talking Thomas Frank going to Spurs, Brian Mbeumo going to Man United, Wissa potentially going to Newcastle, and Christian Norgard going to Arsenal. Those 4 losses right there that I really feel like could have a detrimental impact on Brentford. A real impact. This is a side that last year, they had 2 20-goal forwards. It's 40 goals right there that they're losing out the door. That's a lot of goals to make up. It really is. And I think Thomas Frank is the biggest loss of all of them because, yes, the recruitment scheme, right, the money ball method is what keeps Brentford competitive year on year out. But you also have to give so much credit to Thomas Frank for consistently finding solutions no matter who he loses. Lose Watkins and Benrahma, okay, I'm going to develop Ivan Toney into a real beast in the championship. Lose Ivan Toney, okay, Brian Mbeumo and Wissa, I'm gonna manage to get 40 goals out of them in a season. Like, he's the best at really extracting talent when there doesn't seem to be that much there in the first place. And I just feel like that's a lot. Keith Andrews, look, I'm not gonna pretend like I know what this guy's all about. I know he was on Thomas Frank's coaching staff, I believe. I remember him as a player from the Blackburn days, but as a manager, replacing Thomas Frank just off the bat. I know they brought in Jordan Henderson, they brought in Kelleher, who I think is actually a very good keeper. They've made signings, right? But I don't know, man. I'm looking at Brentford this season. I think that's a lot to lose, and I'm not sure they've replaced it well enough. So I don't know. I see Brentford going down this year, unfortunately. And joining them, I'm going to go, and again, this is tough. I'm going to go with Burnley. Burnley last season were defensive masters in the championship. That's the only way I can really put it. They were a defensive powerhouse. The amount of goals they conceded was record-breaking. Their goalkeeper, James Trafford, was keeping clean sheets left, right, and center. And their whole identity was really defense first. And it showed. They were a wall. And I actually think going into the Premier League, the first season you're there, that's the best kind of identity to have. We saw it for years, coincidentally, with Burnley under Sean Dyche when they first came up, right? And their identity was defending. Their identity was being compact, hard to beat. And it kept them in the Premier League many years on end, despite not maybe having the same quality as other sides. You look also coincidentally at Burnley the last time with Vincent Kompany, and they were playing a much more expansive, beautiful style of play. Vincent Kompany is not the Bayern manager, so it shows he has something about him, but trying to play that way in year one in the Premier League when you might not have the players to do so, oftentimes doesn't always work out in your favor. So for Burnley, it's not so much that I don't like the way they play, that's why they're going to go down, right? That's not the case whatsoever, but I just feel like they've lost a lot this window again. And I think the James Trafford departure is a big one. I know they've actually recruited decently. I like Leslie, Ugo Chukwu, I think, from Chelsea. I don't want to butcher his name, but I think he's a decent player. I think there's some potential there. They brought Armando Broja, who, I mean, has kind of been bouncing from club to club over the last few seasons. That injury a few years back at Southampton really, really hurt him, but let's see what he can do leading the line for Burnley, or at least contributing for them. Kyle Walker added to that back line. Dubravka in goal. Like, they're not bad signings. Kyle Walker, let's see what he can kind of give at this point in his career, right? Wasn't good enough for City, wasn't good enough for Milan, couldn't even be good enough for Burnley. But I think ultimately, again, I look similar to Leeds throughout the squad, and I'm less than convinced that this is a squad capable of staying in the Premier League. I have them getting closer than the other two below them, but I do think they're just about going to miss out. Just about. So those are my relegated three. At 17th, I'm going for Wolves. Again, very, very difficult. I really kind of juggled the idea of them going down as well too, simply because they've lost their two best players in Cunha and Aït-Nouri. Now, Wolves, for half the season under Gary O'Neill, seemed certainties to go down. They were a rock, plummeting, headed straight to the championship, before Vitor Pereira came in and really injected new life into the club. He added stability, he added a bit of unity to that side, and even when Matheus Cunha went down, or was it suspension mixed with injury? When he left the squad, I think a lot of people expected Wolves' form to just plummet. But credit to Vitor Pereira and this group, they actually kept it together even in that run of Cunha. They showed that they're more than just a one-man team. Now, that's not to say that they won't miss Cunha whatsoever, because let's not forget, before they went on that great run, Cunha was the only thing to shout about from this team. He was the only one worth tuning in. The price of admission was Matheus Cunha. He was scoring great goals, he was creating chances. He was the maverick. And I always feel like these sides towards the bottom, a big way that they end up staying up is they do have that one player, that one little genius, maybe in the number 10 position, maybe out wide, that every once in a while can kind of win you a game just off pure individual brilliance. And I think Cunha was really a source of inspiration in that sense. They have replaced him with John Arias, who I'm a big fan of. I watched John Arias every single game during the Club World Cup. No matter, I don't know how much stock you want to put into that, but I did watch him every game for Fluminense. And Fluminense were not the most expansive side. They were not the most entertaining side. They were a side that sat very deep into their block. Thiago Silva was basically being marshaled in a back three and really kind of camped in his own box. Fluminense had a very simple way of playing. Defend deep, press high, hit you on the counterattack. And the guy who could really unlock a defense was John Arias. He was probably the only sense of actual creativity outside of Ganso, who didn't play too much. But Arias was really the guy taking set pieces, striking from distance, similar to how Cunha scored so many goals last year. Brilliant playmaker. 27 years old. This is his first big move out of Brazil. It's a big test keeping this Wolves team up. And I think losing Aït-Nouri as well too, who defensively, I always have my question marks by Aït-Nouri. I love the guy, but he is defensively a little bit shaky. But going forward, there's no doubt that he can cover an entire left flank by himself. And losing those two will be big, and I think it'll creep them even closer to the relegation zone. But I'm going to give Wolves the benefit of the doubt here. I could be wrong. They could very easily go down in my opinion as well too, but I'm going to put them at 17th just for now. At 16th, I'm going for Sunderland. I'm going for the Black Cats. And it's actually funny, right? The championship last season, Leeds and Burnley finished like a whopping 20 points ahead of Sunderland. So you might be asking me, Lyes, why are now Sunderland finishing above them in the Premier League. First and foremost, I don't always feel like how you do in the Championship directly translates to how you do in the Premier League. How many times have we seen the two teams that went automatically up go straight back down, and the side that went up through the playoffs managed to retain their Premier League position? We've seen it a few times. And when I look at the business Sunderland have done, it's a lot more inspiring for me in terms of the quality they're bringing in than Leeds and Burnley. Sunderland have really gone for it in this transfer window. They're signing big players, they're signing experienced players, they're signing Premier League proven players, they're signing exciting players. They've really built and put together a squad of who's who in Europe, right? You can recognize a lot of these names. Now, that's not always the best idea. That's not always a surefire method of staying in the Premier League, right? I'd be lying if I told you that Sunderland 25-26's window doesn't give me flashbacks of Fulham in 18-19, or was it 19-20, when they brought in all those big players, Anguissa, Lookman. They bought Sari that one summer. Fulham had a few windows where they buy big and you just think, wow, they're going to stay in the Premier League. They might even be the shock team. And ultimately, it's too many new moving parts into a side that was very comfortable last season, and it all kind of comes crumbling down. QPR did it one season. Forest did it the year they came up, and it almost cost them. They almost went straight back down. Too much change does not always guarantee you being a better team. I'm very, very aware of that. However, compared to the three sides I have going down, I do look at Sunderland's team at the time of recording, and I think they have more. I think Granit Xhaka, although I don't think he's the same Xhaka of 3 seasons ago, that's a real player to add in. Like, if I'm looking at Brentford adding in Jordan Henderson and Sunderland adding Granit Xhaka, I know which one moves me more. And it's funny, actually, because Sunderland were linked with a return to bringing back Jordan Henderson, a reunion, but they decided to go for Xhaka. He's their captain right off the bounce, and I think that's pretty damning because that just shows you what kind of person Granit Xhaka is, what kind of leader he is. He is going to bring incredible quality to that side. Adingra, that's going to be incredible quality to that side. Ronaldo, let's see how much he plays, but that's a Champions League level player over the last few seasons for Atletico Madrid. I think Sunderland, at the time of recording, on paper, look a much stronger, not much stronger, they look a stronger side than the relegated 3, but again, I'm very cautious to put them there because we've seen winning the transfer window or being amongst the best transfer windows does not guarantee success. But I'm going to put them right at 16th place. Just above them now, and I think this is where you can kind of start to create a bit of distance between 16th and 15th. But in 15th place, I have West Ham. I think West Ham have a decent team. I look at their squad, right? And I think to myself, they've got some good players. Jared Bowen, I find, is one of the most underrated players in the Premier League. The guy is a consistent 12 to 15 goal player every single season in this league, whether his team is fighting for Europe, whether they're fighting relegation. Bowen is a consistent threat and a consistent productive player. Wan-Bissaka, I think, is a very good right back, very capable right back. I think Paqueta, you will see a real bounce back season for him because I'm a fan of Paqueta, and I honestly think sometimes we forget about the human side of the game, and this is a guy that over the last few years has been battling betting allegations nonstop, and not even just betting allegations, like retirement allegations. Like, if that betting scandal ended up having some validity, he would have been removed from the game. He would have never played again. I think that's a lot mentally to kind of handle while playing week in, week out. Yeah, his move to City completely ripped out his heart. Imagine his career 2 years ago if he joined City instead, if that thing never happens. So I do think Paqueta's form has really been impacted by that, but I have no doubt in my mind that Paqueta, when he's on it, is one of the more dangerous players outside of the big six. So that's another player right there. I'm really interested in watching Malik Diouf, the left back that they signed from, was it Slavia Prague? I know they signed him from Czech Republic, but I watched him for Senegal against England. Guy's got a great whip on him. Very aggressive, very athletic, very direct. I think he's a player. I've seen a few West Ham fans really high on that move. I just look from front to back with West Ham. I think they have quality, but the reason I have them in 15th is not a question about player quality. I think it's a question of identity, right? I was never against them letting go of David Moyes a few seasons back because I did feel like it had gone a little stale. I did feel like they had kind of reached their ceiling under David Moyes and they were starting to kind of come down a little bit. But I didn't really like the replacement they went for in Lopetegui. From day one, I didn't think that was the greatest replacement. And although I think Graham Potter is a good manager, I think he's a good guy, smart ideas, very emotionally intelligent. To go from Moyes to now Lopetegui to Graham Potter, I just feel like you really have to stick to a way you want to play and fully commit to it. And I don't think West Ham have done that whatsoever. I look at Graham Potter's West Ham since he came in the job, and I struggle to really see what the idea is there. Like, what are they trying to do on the football pitch? I'm sorry, to this day, I'm still a little perplexed by it. Yes, there's good players. Yes, I think Graham Potter's a decent manager, but identity is the key word for me here. And I think at the moment, they're sorely kind of lacking one. That's up to Graham Potter to really, again, kind of put his influence on this team from day one. Oh, obviously he hasn't done it, but from game one. This season, they have to start out strong. they have to really show that they understand the way Graham Potter wants to play, because his tenure last season, oh my goodness, man. I mean, I think the only game I can remember them really looking decent in was Man United, and that was a gimme for most of the teams in the league last year. West Ham this year, let's see how they do, but at the moment, I do have them in 15th place. In 14th, I think maybe our first shock of the prediction video, I'm going to put Nottingham Forest at 14th place. Now, this is a big drop-off. This is arguably the biggest drop-off of any team from last season to this one. I got Nottingham Forest finishing 14th for a few reasons, right? First and foremost, I'm going to say how it is, right? I don't think what they did last year was sustainable. I was a huge admirer of it. I was a big fan of the story, but I think you could very clearly see the last months of the season, the wheels started falling off the bus. The wheels started to rust. And ultimately, Nottingham Forest's tactic of just sitting deep, absorbing so much pressure, eating like 50 shots, not literally, but you know what I mean, like eating so many shots on goal and then managing to hit teams with ruthless breaks where they were almost scoring every chance they got, or at least it felt that way. I just don't feel like that's sustainable. And it showed last season towards the end of the year where it all kind of came crashing down. Now, it was still enough to make the Europa League. Well, they made the Conference League, and then through different ways that they made the Europa League. But yeah, I just feel like they were in a really good moment last season, and they went through an amazing bit of momentum where it almost felt like they couldn't lose a game. They were chilling in the top 4 for most of the season. But I don't think that's an accurate representation of this Nottingham Forest team. I expect a few of these guys to kind of come down to their average level. Chris Wood, up to no good. I'm sorry, I don't see how he replicates what he did last year. I feel like that's an outlier. Like, he's always going to guarantee you 10 plus goals. I'm not trying to say Chris Wood's a scrub. He's a very able Premier League striker. But I'm sorry, for large parts of last season, he was looking like a top 5 striker in the world. I just don't think he's at the level he is last season. Elanga is a big loss. They've brought in a few players from that Botafogo team from the Club World Cup that, again, impressed me. Igor Jesus being one of them. But yeah, man, with Forest this year, I just don't see them being as tight at the back. I still rate a few of their players defensively, but I don't think as a unit they will be as impenetrable as they were at times last season. I think they will concede more chances, they will concede more goals, and I don't expect them to score as many as they did last season. It's pretty much as simple as that. And if you score less than last year and you concede more than you did last year, you are going to fall down the table. Mix that with the fact that they're in Europe, they're going to have to be playing 2 to 3 games a week. I see Forest kind of dropping down, and I have them at 14th. Just ahead of them, I have Crystal Palace, and I honestly wish I could put them higher, but the future of Eze and Guehi makes me very, very uncertain about what we see from Palace this season. Hot take, if they manage to keep both of them, I have them finishing top half without a doubt. I love Oliver Glasner as a coach. I love what he's doing. I love his system. I love how everybody seems to understand their role in that team. I love how cohesive they are. I love what he's done with Mateta. I love how Eze is just a real maverick in that team. Guehi, the real linchpin in defense, really the leader, literally and figuratively. I love this Crystal Palace side, but I do fear you lose Guehi and Eze. And at this point in the window as well too, and you are capped as a football club. As brilliant as the manager is, as good as the team is as a unit, you lose your 2 best players. You're going to struggle, man. You are going to struggle. I don't really see what they can do in the last month of the season if they do lose both of them. That is going to supplement their absences. So that mixed with the fact that they're again playing in Europe, I think Europe is going to hurt a few teams this season that really fired high last year. Because of that, I do see Crystal Palace finishing 13th, which, to be fair, maybe that's not the worst shout, right? Because 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, that seems to be a banker for Crystal Palace every single season. But I really did feel like this year was the year they could have potentially aimed a little higher. This side's a good side, man. I watched them in the what's it called, the Community Shield last weekend. I watched them last year. I watched them on their FA Cup run. It's a good starting 11. They got some decent pieces off the bench. But those two leaving the club, again, it's not certain. Maybe I'll record a video after the transfer window, kind of amending all my changes after a few signings have been made. Maybe some players stay, maybe some players leave. And if they manage to keep them, I will 100%, hand on heart, have them mid-table or higher mid-table, 1,000%. It's a good team. Creeping into higher mid-table, though, the first team I have here in 12th is Bournemouth. And okay, spoiler here, right? For all of the teams that you're about to see from 8 to 12, I'm expecting all of them to fall off a bit from last year. Last year, I think, was one of those years in the Premier League where I looked at the middle pack, like, forget about the traditional big 6, forget even about Newcastle and Villa, who have really kind of emerged as consistent challengers for those positions, and forget about the bottom dwellers, right? Last season, if you look at the mid-table clubs, the Fulhams, the Bournemouths, the Brightons, the Crystal Palaces, the Forests, I really think they had special seasons, and it made for one of the most balanced Premier League years we have seen. Because you look at the squads they had, you look at the managers they had as well too, and like, we always say the Premier League, anyone can beat anybody on their day, but I really always feel like that's a cliche until last season, where genuinely those sides could go to any ground in the league and pick something up. But unfortunately, when you look at Bournemouth, when you look at Brighton, when you look at Crystal Palace, when you look at Forest, you look at a few of these sides, Wolves, Brentford, they have kind of been decimated by other clubs. Because they were so good last season, other clubs inevitably looked at their players and said, oh, you could actually go play at the next level. And Crystal Palace might be losing Guehi and Eze. We'll talk about Brighton, but they've already lost Joao Pedro. They might be losing Baleba. And Bournemouth have lost Kerkez to Liverpool, Zabarni to PSG, and Huijsen to Real Madrid. Are you listening to those three names? The teams that they just joined. Kerkez to Liverpool, the champions of England. Dean Huijsen to Real Madrid, the biggest club in the world. And Zabarni to PSG, the European champions. That is the kind of quality Bournemouth had in their back line last year. Incredible. And it's the reason why they were so good last season. And you lost all three of them. You've lost Kepa as well, too, to Arsenal. He's gone there to be a backup. So that's what? 4 out of the 5 defensive players that you had last year, right? 4 out of the 5 players in that defensive makeup. Inevitably, that is going to hurt Bournemouth. I think with Bournemouth as well, too, I notice with Iraola, they tend to end seasons a little weak, I feel, because simply how hard they press, right? They are one of the most front-footed, aggressive sides in the league. And it makes for amazing football to watch as a neutral. It makes them incredibly dangerous when they're at their best. But it also kind of tends to feel like they burn out a little quicker towards the end of the season than everybody else because of how much energy they expend. And because of the losses to their defense, and because of that as well too, I do feel like we are going to see a decline from last season, where at times they were even challenging for that 5th place. They could have easily made that 5th Champions League position. But look, at the end of the day as well too, they have Iraola, who, since Thomas Frank has gone to Spurs, I actually do believe Iraola is probably the next manager at these mid-table clubs that if Man United fires a manager, Newcastle fires a manager, Spurs fires a manager, Arsenal, Chelsea, hypothetically, right? I think the next manager they would look at if they wanted to stay in the league would be Iraola. I think we all looked at Frank for the last few years, right? Oh, if there's a big managerial position that opens up, Thomas Frank is going to get it. I look at Iraola now, and I think he's kind of the next man up in that order. So, great manager. They've still kept a few of their big players, right? Evan Nilsson is still there. I expect him to have a very good season as well, too. Midfield is still incredibly strong. Semenyo has stayed at the club, which I'm actually surprised about. I thought he could have potentially been one of those players alongside Kudus, alongside Mbeumo, that maybe made a jump to a bigger club. They've managed to keep him. But I think defensively, that's where you're going to kind of feel it from Bournemouth. So, let's see, but I got them at 12 for now. Just ahead of them, I got Fulham at 11th, and this just feels right, to be honest with you, right? Notice when I said all these clubs in mid-table have kind of lost players, I didn't mention Fulham because it's the same team that they had last year. I'm not sure they've added anybody. I'm not too sure they've sold anybody either. Yeah, I literally just checked now. They've brought nobody in of note, and they've lost nobody of note. So it's effectively the same team that was there last year. And again, Fulham were another side that were challenging actually for those European positions. At one point, them, Bournemouth, Brighton, Forest, they were all within a handful of points of Chelsea, Newcastle, Aston Villa, even City at one point looked like they were kind of creeping into that battle. Now, keeping them at 11th, do I expect them to have the same season last year? Fulham were a real dangerous side for the bigger teams. I mean, Chelsea, United, City, Liverpool, they all struggled going to Craven Cottage. They all struggled welcoming Fulham to their own ground. But I do think 11th is probably where I kind of favor them at the moment. I do think 11th place is a pretty safe bet for them. I don't expect them to go up that much. I don't expect them to plummet either, man. They're same old Fulham with a great manager as well, too. Marco Silva. Maybe after Iraola, the best manager of the remaining pack in this mid-table, right? I think he's a very, very good manager as well, too. Slightly ahead of them, I have Everton. Now, I'm a little worried about this prediction. The reason being, there's always that one side in the Premier League that we look at and almost unanimously say, this is the surprise of the season. This is the team that's going to shock everybody. Last year, it was West Ham, right? They made so many big signings in the window that we all kind of thought, oh, this is going to propel them up the league. And they were an absolute unmitigated disaster, right? I went into the season like a month ago with Everton and thought, they're going to be the surprise package of the season. They are. And Jai is still there. They've bought Barry, a really promising striker up front. More importantly than that, David Moyes is at the helm. I think he's the best at really steadying a ship. They ended last season very, very well. New stadium, good vibes. I think they're a problem this year for the Prem. And I thought I was special as hell saying that. I genuinely thought, oh, this is gonna be a shout. This is the one I'm hanging my hat on. And then all of a sudden, right, I'm watching James Alcott's prediction. I'm looking at Culture Cam's prediction. I'm looking at Fuad Kadani's prediction, SDS's prediction, Matisse's prediction, and I clocked. Oh, I ain't special at all. Everybody else thinks Everton's going to be the surprise of the season. And that makes me incredibly nervous because I almost feel like it's a rule in the Premier League, an unspoken rule. Whatever everyone thinks is going to happen never ends up actually happening. I'm going to stick with it because I actually believe it. I'm not saying it because I saw other people say it. It's my honest opinion. I do think Everton are set to have a good season. And one guy I didn't mention is Jack Grealish, who they've recently brought in on loan. Big point to prove this year for Jack Grealish. He is under big pressure to kind of revive his career, right? I think David Moyes has given him a real lifeline to come to a smaller stage, less eyes on him, less expectation, more potential freedom for him to be a bigger player in the side as an individual. He's got to take it now. World Cup on the horizon. Could this be one last chance to get himself back into the England team, into Thomas Tuchel's good books? Let's see how it goes, right? But the biggest thing for me, right, is David Moyes. David Moyes has a ceiling as a manager. I think we've seen that at times. But I'm sorry, the floor that he's able to create for football teams is incredibly high. I never feel like David Moyes' sides are in danger of relegation. I never feel like David Moyes' sides go through like 10-game winless runs. It might not be the prettiest to watch all the time, but it's effective. It's structured. It's organized. And I think this Everton side has an element of that, but also an element of magic to them as well, too. And you kind of cast your mind back to that original David Moyes side of the late 2000s, right? Steven Pienaar, Cahill, Billy Adnanov, Fellaini, Arteta, Leon Osman. They had a bit of a mix of magic and a bit of a mix of steel and sense. And it really made for a special, special team. Those Everton teams were fun, right? I always used to say they're the best of the rest. I don't think Everton are the best of the rest here, right? I think there's a few sides above them. But you add an Njai to the equation. You add a Jack Grealish to the equation. You add potentially a Tyler Dibling, who there are reports that he might be joining Everton. And then you add David Moyes just at the helm of it, kind of orchestrating it and adding some structure to the chaos. I think Everton are in for a good season. I got them 10th, but I'm not happy that all of you guys have them 10th as well too. Please, stop. 9th place. I went back and forth with this one a lot. And disclaimer, this is at the time of recording. So if there's a few signings that come in, my opinion on this will change. But at the time of recording, at 9th place, I have Manchester United. At 9th place, I have Manchester United. Now, maybe I'm just scarred. Maybe I'm pessimistic. Maybe I got PTSD. Last season, I think I had Man United finishing 5th. We finished 10 places below that. So like I said, maybe this is PTSD kind of hitting me here. Maybe I'm cautious. Maybe I'm weary of going too far. We've made good signings. Mbeumo, Cunha, Benjamin Sesko, they're great players. Our front three is undoubtedly better than it was 6 months ago. But I'm sorry, right? I still have question marks over Amram, and I don't think I'm in the wrong to do so. He has shown me very little to be fully convinced that he's the guy. He has a lot of proving to do early in the season. I don't think anyone can berate me for that, right? We just finished 15th. It's time to prove what you can do. And I don't trust that midfield whatsoever. Look, I think the back three system, it's heavily reliant on your midfield. It's reliant on the wing backs for sure. It's reliant on the 210s. But I think that midfield, that engine room has to be special. It has to be top. And our midfield engine room is anything but that. It is very, very unspectacular. Casemiro, Bruno, Ugarte, Kobe, maybe talented players individually. In a three, I can see a world where Kobe thrives. Bruno Fernandes is one of the best creative midfielders higher up the pitch. Ugarte is a specialist destroyer, if you will. Casemiro showed in Europe last season. He's still capable of moments. So I'm not trying to kill any of these players here, right? But I'm sorry, I've seen enough to know in a deep two, these guys don't work in the system. They don't. They absolutely don't. And I think a big thing is if they're able to get Carlos Baleba over the line. Now, I'm not a believer that I'm not a believer, right? No pun intended. But I'm not a believer in this idea that one player added into your midfield changes everything, because I think structure is just as important as player quality. And I question Man United's structure. I question our shape. But adding Baleba would do a lot to this team. I'd actually propel them up the league if they managed to get Baleba. A goalkeeper on top of that, I think we're talking European positions. But at the time of recording, if Man United are heading into this season with Bruno and Casemiro as your starting midfield too, and the alternative being Kobe, Mainoo, and Ugarte, please, guys, do not try and sell me on this. Do not. We're going to score more goals than last season. We're going to be better than last season. We're going to win more games than last season. But not enough to make any kind of substantial push for Champions League, Europa League, maybe even Conference League. You add a Baleba into the equation, you add a goalkeeper, and all of a sudden I'm starting to feel a bit more comfortable. But at the time of recording, look, we're having a great window on paper. I've seen this before from Man United. How does it translate on the football pitch? At the moment, I'm less than convinced that it does. So I'm going to put them at 9th. And I think that's actually like a fair, safe option right now. They could finish 8th, 7th for sure. They could also finish 10th, 11th, guys. I'm going to put them right at 9th with the disclaimer that more business, more signings could very well change my mind. Straight ahead of them, I have Brighton. And again, funnily enough, the Baleba signing heavily impacts my pick here as well too. At the time of recording, they have kept hold of Baleba. They're quoting upwards of 100 million. And he's a big player for them. He's a unique jack of all trades, master of many, it seems as well too. He's a midfielder that just feels like he can do everything. They've managed to keep him. They managed to keep most of the squad. I know they lost Joao Pedro. They lost Adingra, who I don't think is a big loss, right? I like Adingra as a player, but I don't think he was super crucial to Brighton. I think they can live without him. I think Pedro's the big loss there, right? And I think Jorginho Rutter, there's going to be a lot of expectation on him now to put it together for a full season. He showed flashes last year, but now he's going to have to really be a replacement for Pedro. But I look at Brighton, man. They lose their best players every year. They do exceptional business in return. They're inconsistent. They have highs. They have lows, as we saw last season. But ultimately, they win more games than not. They entertain. They score goals. I got them at 8th for now. I do. And I even, to be honest, flirted with the idea of putting them up here as well, too. But I don't know. I think there's still questions about Hurtzler. I think that's probably the big one for me. I think Hurtzler, for his first season in top flight football last year, as a manager, he's incredibly young, we know that. I think it was a mixed season. Following in for De Zerbi, those are big shoes to step in, right? And I think there were highs from Brighton. They started the season incredibly well and then really petered off towards the second half of the season, right? There was that huge loss to Nottingham Forest more than anything that I think had fans really questioning, is this the guy to take us forward? Is it too much too early for Hurtzler? But I think, look, he's more experienced. He's a bit more savvy. I think the squad is still largely the same. And if they manage to keep Baleba, I still have them over most of these clubs. And I actually think they could very well push up in these positions. If they do sell Baleba, that might not be the worst thing either, to be fair, guys. We've seen Brighton lose players for big money and replace them with 4 or 5 guys that in 4 or 5 years are going to be worth 50, 60 million. So if anyone could use 100 million to go and spend on 3 different players, it's probably Brighton. But for now, I got them at 8th. Stepping into the European positions now. At 7th place, I have Aston Villa. I'm not that high on Aston Villa this season. I'm a little weary about them. I think Aston Villa last year ended the season incredibly well. The second half of the year was exceptional. And I think it was largely catapulted off the efforts of 2 players that they brought in on loan. I think Rashford's influence on that team was huge. And I think Marco Asensio's impact on that team was ginormous. Now, they are in talks to bring back Asensio, which, if they do, could propel them to 6th, maybe even 5th. But I think it's important to remember that before they brought in those 2 players, they were around 9th place, guys. Yes, they weren't a million miles off the European positions. I get that. But they were no better than Brighton. They were no better than Bournemouth. They were no better than a lot of these teams, right? They were in a dogfight in those mid-table positions. I literally checked it earlier. After 19, 18 games, they were in 9th place. Rashford and Asensio really catapulted that side, and they went on a terrific vein of form that ultimately kind of ended when they lost to City in heartbreaking fashion. They should have made the Champions League last season. We know what happened in the United game as well too. But I think failure to make the Champions League has really hampered the side from a financial point of view. It's meant that they were really incapable of putting together an offer for Rashford that was like financially competitive and also competitive in general from a sporting point of view. It's meant that Asensio has really had to be like a last-ditch kind of incoming. They weren't able to keep Disasi or Malin, but I don't think those are huge losses, to be fair. I think both of them were last season. They brought in, what's his name, Guesson from France, the Ivorian. He's an option out wide. But to be honest with you guys, if I'm being very, very real here, I feel like it's kind of gone stale for Villa. That's my honest opinion here. I do feel like it's gone stale for them. I think last season, that European run, that fairy tale, beating Bayern, pushing PSG to the limits, almost making Champions League again, I think that's a big thing to kind of, like, it's almost like a big hangover this season from the highs that they reached the last 2 years. And I think my hot take here, guys, is end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if Unai Emery is no longer in this job. I'm not saying he's going to get fired. I think he might even leave his post. But I don't think Villa will hit the heights they did the last 2 seasons. I do kind of see them coming down to earth. And that's a shame because I actually really like Aston Villa as a football club and I like a lot of their players. I still think they have a great team, by the way. Their midfield is exceptionally strong. Onana, Tielemans, Boubacar Kamara, who I'm a huge fan of. Morgan Rogers, I'm expecting to have a big season. I think a big thing is Watkins, right? Watkins had a mixed season last year. Again, finished the season with a healthy goal return, no doubt about it. But again, let's not forget that for large parts of the first half of the season, again, I think he was inconsistent. Duran was coming in for him and winning games for Villa. And I think once he left, Watkins started scoring more goals towards the end of the season. But Watkins now approaching, what is it, year 30 for him now? Can he still be that 12 to 15 goal season striker that he seems to always be? Let's see. Let's see. I have Villa at 7th for now. Slightly ahead of them, I have Spurs. Now, caveat, this is before the transfer window ends. Spurs are linked to Eze. Spurs are linked to Savinho. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, spoiler alert, if they manage to bring those two players in, Spurs are finishing in the top 5. I don't have a doubt about it. I love Thomas Frank as a manager. I loved Ange as well too. I was a big Ange guy, but I think undoubtedly Thomas Frank brings a bit more maturity to this team. I think that's the word here. Spurs will be more mature than they were last season. Last year was a disaster. It was an unmitigated disaster. A team that finished 5th the year before, nearly pushed for the Champions League, plummeted all the way to 17th place. And yes, a big part of that was due to the injuries. Spurs had an unparalleled injury crisis last year. In every position you can think of, a player missed time. Goalkeeper, defense, midfield, attack. At some point I was wondering, is Ange going to go down as well too? It was crazy. But also, let's not get it twisted either. Ange was so stubborn last year. Because, yeah, they had injuries. But guys, when you lose players, you're meant to compensate with that a bit of savviness, a bit of flexibility, and showed none of that the entire Premier League season. Van de Ven and Romero went down, and he's playing Archie Gray and Dragusin in the high line. Dragusin, who runs like he's running through quicksand, and Archie Gray, who's a teenager that plays in midfield, can play at fullback, and never plays at center back traditionally. Like, two of them are getting picked apart every single game. They're playing with an ocean of space in behind them, an ocean of space in front of them. So I've never seen a team that were at 6s and 7s nearly as much as Spurs were last year. Maybe you talk about the relegated teams. They were the only team close to that. And literally in the table, they were as well too. It was ridiculous, man. And it's a shame because you saw them in the Europa League. They really put together a good run once Ange started becoming a bit more defensively disciplined and saying, okay, let's sit back a little bit more. Let's be a bit more structured. Let's be a bit more savvy. But ultimately, yes, they won the Europa League, but Levy said it himself, man. You can't finish 17th place for a club the size of Spurs. It's impossible. He's out and Thomas Frank is in. And Thomas Frank might not be as gung-ho as Ange. He might not be as adventurous. He might not entertain the fans as much when everything is going his way. But one thing is for sure, Spurs will be a much more organized team. A much more. And I'm sorry, right? I said it in my video against PSG. Van de Ven, Romero, Udogie, Spence, Porro, Kevin Danso. These are good players. These are good defenders. They have the potential to be an incredible back 4, even a back 5, but they have to be organized correctly. And I think that's where Ange failed massively. Ange had players like Romero and Van de Ven looking like amateurs. They're great players. Van de Ven and Romero, I'm telling you, that has the potential to be one of the best defensive partnerships in the league. And I just don't think you got the chance to see it because of how they were being deployed. I think Thomas Frank adds an element of steel to Spurs. And I think that's the biggest improvement that they can make. Now, they need reinforcements badly. I think you saw it in the Super Cup against PSG. They were incredible for 60, 70 minutes. And then the minute they have to start bringing players in off their bench, the quality massively drops off, right? Matthias Tell has been signed on a permanent. I'm less than convinced at the moment. I am. Solanke came off the bench. He has to have a big bounce back season. Kudus was incredible. And I think Kudus is going to have a real big year. I'm not a believer that last season was the real Kudus. I think this guy's an incredible talent. But you add Savinho and Eze to this side, I have no doubt in my mind Spurs finish top 5. Their midfield is strong, it's organized, it's deep. Obviously, we saw Painha, Sarr, and Bentancur the other day. You can add Bergvall in for a bit more fluidness. Kulusevski is going to return to the team at some point this season. He gives a bit of ball carrying from deeper positions. Yeah, James Maddison's a big loss. But Spurs, I expect a much better season. I think the 5th place finish of 2 years ago is a much closer representation of what the Spurs team actually is than last season was. I truly believe that. And in 5th, occupying that position that I think Spurs could very easily claim is Newcastle. And again, guys, this is before the transfer window ends, so it's very difficult to kind of definitely put a stamp on things here, right? Newcastle's transfer window has been nothing short of a disaster. It's been ridiculously bad. I haven't seen many things like it. Their best player has effectively gone AWOL. He's boycotted the team. He's said on numerous occasions he wants to leave, which in its own right, I think is disgraceful. I'm not a fan of the way Isaac has gone about things this summer whatsoever. 3 years left on his deal, and I think he's acting like a child. I understand why he wants to leave. I don't fault him whatsoever for wanting to make up the step up to Liverpool, but brother, no one made you sign a 6-year contract 3 years ago. Respect the club that you're at a little bit. And Newcastle are open to letting him go at the right price, but also with the caveat as well too that they bring a replacement in. And that's really where it's gone wrong for Newcastle this summer, right? They wanted Joao Pedro. He ended up going to Chelsea. They wanted Sesko. He's gone to Man United. They've wanted a few players. Wissa, they haven't been able to get over the line, but it does look like that deal will eventually kind of happen. Nicholas Jackson's been a name that's been floated around. Samu from Porto has been a name that's been floated around. They've been linked to so many different players. And it's just a kind of a question of which one's going to happen. If they manage to bring in Jackson and Wissa, they're decent players, right? I think Jackson is actually overhated by a lot of Premier League fans. Wissa has proven that he can score goals and he'd be a good backup. But I'm sorry. You're going from Alexander Isak, who, in my reckoning, is a top 5 striker in the world, to 2 players who, in my opinion, are not even half the player he is. That's a decline. You have gotten worse just off that. Secondly, going into the season with as much uncertainty and with so much noise around the camp as Newcastle have had, Eddie Howe is going to have to do an exceptional job of unifying this group and kind of almost creating a siege mentality here, right? We see the whole footballing world is laughing at Newcastle. We see the way Isak is almost making a mockery of this club, disrespecting his teammates the way he is. Eddie Howe really has to create a siege mentality around this group to block out the noise and almost take everything personally. Oh, you don't believe in us. Oh, you don't think you're good, you're too good for us. Oh, you don't think we can do what we did last season. How about that? Show them something. I think that's really the mentality he has to kind of bring into this group. And I think, look, Newcastle, their players, it's a tight-knit group. They make St. James's Park a battle fortress. Honestly, it's one of the toughest places in the league to go. They're going to have to elevate that times 10 this year to have the season they want to. They brought in some players, right? Ramsdale has come in. Look, I mean, bro, they wanted Trafford. They haven't been able to get him. They got Ramsdale. He's an upgrade on Pope, I would say, at this point in his career, but not the one that they wanted. They brought in Malik Thiaw from AC Milan. He's going to strengthen that back line. He's going to add some depth to it. Jacob Ramsey as well, too. I've always thought Jacob Ramsey is a promising player at Aston Villa. It looks like he might be coming across the line as well, too. But in my opinion, it's the center forward position. Going from Isak to Nicholas Jackson and Wissa is just such a big downgrade that I think they are going to drop off, right? Like, they were in and around Chelsea, City, and even Arsenal towards the end. And right now I have them 5th, contingent on what Spurs do in the window. But just because they might finish in the same position doesn't mean they'll be as close to the others. I think City, Chelsea, and Arsenal take a massive leap past the Newcastle this season. So they might very well finish in the same position, but the points gap between them and the top 4 will be huge. But ultimately, it might not matter, right? 5th might make Champions League again. So it could be a good season for Newcastle. But if it's anything to go by off how their summer has been, I do feel like they are entering the season with just a bad stench around the club. And it's not their fault. It honestly isn't. But when the mood around the camp is as bleak as it kind of appears to be at Newcastle, I don't think that's the best situation to enter a year going into. So Newcastle, I'm a little worried, but I mean, again, it's contingent on what Spurs do. It's contingent on what United do. It's contingent on what Villa do. At the moment, at the time of recording, Newcastle can chill in 5th. And now we enter the toughest part of this video because, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still not entirely sure what order I have these 4 in. I'm still not entirely sure. I've gone back and forth with this so many times, guys, right? Like, you know that Doctor Strange scene from Avengers Endgame, or Infinity War, excuse me, where he closes his eyes and like he's going, I had a stroke right there, right? And he's just envisioning all the different realities in his head. And then he comes down to one single conclusion. This is the way to defeat Thanos. I've done the same. I've gone through all the different scenarios. There's been about 3,272,473,670,000 different scenarios that this Premier League season can kind of finish in. And I've locked in, and this is the one that's going to happen. Effectively, I'm not sure, but I'm just going to go with my gut here. I'm going to go with my gut. In 4th place, I have Chelsea. Again, let me say this, right? I think the top 4 are going to be very, very close. I think all 4 of these teams could hit 80 points. I think, guys, we could genuinely look at the closest title race we've had since 13-14, like between more than 2 clubs. So me putting Chelsea at 4th doesn't mean I don't think they're going to be anywhere near these guys. I think they are going to challenge for the league, and I think they're going to be healthy distance between them and Newcastle, or whoever finishes in 5th. But I have Chelsea finishing in 4th. And you know the reason why? I think Chelsea have a very deep squad. I think there's a lot of quality in every position. I really rate Enzo Maresca as a coach. And I think they have some top players in the forms of Caicedo, Cucurella, Cole Palmer. I think you could genuinely make the conversation they're top 3 in their positions. Top 3 to top 5 in world football. They're deep. They're built to last the distance, you would think. But I actually think Chelsea, in their current moment, are more suited to a deep Champions League run than they are going the distance in the Premier League. My hot take for Chelsea this year is of all the English sides in the Champions League this year, Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Newcastle, I predict Chelsea will go the furthest in the Champions League. I think Enzo Maresca is an incredible knockout manager. What I saw in the Club World Cup, what I saw admittedly in the Conference League, it's not the highest competition ever, but what I have seen when it comes to Maresca managing for specific matchups, I think he's one of the best in the business, which is shocking because at Leicester, I almost felt like, is this a manager that only knows how to play one way? But no, at Chelsea, he has shown remarkable flexibility in terms of accommodating for opposition teams. Against PSG, he plays one way. Against Palmeiras, he plays another way. Against Benfica, he plays another way. He's more than happy to shift moving parts. He plays so many different systems based on what the game requires. And that's why I think they're going to go very, very far in the Champions League. I think they're going to have a great league season. I think they're going to start the season like a house on fire. That's my prediction for Chelsea as well, too. I think after 5-6 games, Chelsea will be top of the league. I've looked at their fixtures. I've looked at the mood of the club kind of heading into the season. I'm expecting big things for them. But I just think lasting 38 games, is this group ready to do it? Is this group experienced enough to get to the finish line? Ultimately, I don't think they are. I think they will falter around April, which is still going deep into the season. They are going to be there till the end. But I think I look at the other three, and honestly, I'm not 100% confident. I think this could happen. I think this could very well happen as well, too. I'm not confident in putting Chelsea fourth, but I think experience is a big thing here. I think their lack of experience in really competing in title races, that's where these three have them trumped. Now, that's not always a sure thing, right? Sometimes youth and naivety and almost energy, right? It can actually propel you to a really healthy title challenge. Sometimes that's more important than having been battle tested. But I think ultimately Chelsea will fall just short of the Premier League title this season. And again, them finishing fourth, they could very well finish third or second for me. But I don't think they'll get it done this season. This next selection is even more difficult for me. It's even more difficult for me. City or Arsenal? Okay, this is where I stand on these two teams. I think Manchester City's ceiling as a football team this year is higher than Arsenal's. Meaning, if everything goes right for City this year, they have a better team than Arsenal. The problem is, I think Arsenal's floor is higher than Man City's. Meaning, worst case scenario for Arsenal and worst case scenario for City, I would expect Arsenal to finish above City because their floor is higher. I think Arsenal are a tougher team to beat than Man City. They don't really lose games, right? Last season, I think they drew 12 games. I'm not saying they win every game that they play in. They clearly showed last year that they don't, but they're incredibly tough to beat. They're incredibly tough to score against. They're incredibly tough to even break down and create chances against. They have more possession than most teams. I know City do as well too. But I think their defensive structure makes it that Arsenal are almost always going to be in around 75 to 80, 85 points. Now, City's potential to hit high 90s or even mid 90s is higher than Arsenal's. If everything goes right for City, they could win the whole league. I'm not sure I believe that about Arsenal. I don't think Arsenal will win the league this season. But I think with Man City, if I want to start with Man City, right? I love the attacking signings that they've made. Ait Nouri, Cherki, and Reinders. They're bringing players back as well too. Rodri will be back this season. We're going to talk about him in a second. Oscar Bob will be fit for the whole year. Foden has to have a bit of a remontada, has to. Marmoush will be there for a full season, and Erling Haaland is still Erling Haaland. I think City as an attacking unit in terms of the way they play, forget about even the individuals, are a much more expansive team. They're a much more scary team in front of goal. They have the best goal scorer in the world. They're fast, they're creative, they're dynamic. City, when they're on it, can beat any team 4-5-0 easily. But I think the issue for them is from a defensive point of view. I still think this team gets picked in transition apart way too often. And it's not even necessarily just because of their defenders. I think even in midfield, they feel a little weak. And I think a big part of that is down to Pep's reliance still on Bernardo, on Gundogan, and on Kovacic. I think he's got to let go of these guys. Not from he has to sell them. He has to become a little less reliant on them. And it's so shocking to me seeing Pep like this because throughout his career, I've known him to be a very ruthless manager. Ronaldinho, Deco, I come to the club. You're not up to the standards of what I think my team needs fitness-wise, mentality-wise. You're out the door before a ball is even kicked. Zlatan, after one season, you're out the door. Bayern, Schweinsteiger, you clearly don't have the legs anymore. City, Joe Hart, out the door. Aguero, you're not the same level anymore. We cannot replace him. Yeah, replaced him, man. David Silva, it's time to move on. Pep has shown a real ruthlessness throughout his career, which is what keeps him at the top. But I feel like over the last season, he's kind of turned soft at times. And I look at that group of John Stones, Akanji, Kovacic, Bernardo, Gundogan. This is the old guard. It's a group of players that, in my eyes, are no longer capable of starting week in, week out for a serious title contender. And yet Pep seems to still favor them. I think he's still afraid to let them go. Maybe because of what they've accomplished for him. Maybe because he values their leadership. But I don't think City's best team includes them anymore. And I think you can really see a weakness in that side when Bernardo and Gundogan are playing, for example. They don't have the legs to do it anymore. They get ran through. They get ran past. If the midfield is a combination of Reinders and Rodri at his best level, all of a sudden the City team looks incredibly different. It does. I think a big question mark is Cherki. I'm a big advocate for Cherki. I'm a big fan. But what does he look like season 1 in the Premier League? And I think the biggest question mark, which will determine where City finish in the league, honestly, I have them second or third right now. I think they could potentially win the title, depending on what version of Rodri comes back this season. Everything I just talked about, defensive transition, strength in midfield, structure, organization, steel, quality, it's all mitigated by what version of Rodri comes back. Rodri missed the entirety of last season, and he came back towards the end of the year, and then he played in the Club World Cup, and I don't think he looked like the same Rodri. And I understand why. He tore his ACL, for God's sake. That's a tough injury to just come back from immediately. Van Dijk, the first few weeks, I remember that preseason friendly he played immediately after coming back. He looked like a mess. It takes a while to recover from that kind of injury. But I think that's also a question mark here, right? Rodri's out till September. When he comes back, what percentage of Ballon d'Or winning Rodri does Manchester City have? If it's 80% or higher, I think this is a real possibility. If it's anything less than 80%, mixed with, again, the defensive weaknesses that I do think they have, especially at fullback, by the way, right? Ait-Nouri and Nunes. I love Ait-Nouri. Again, going forward, he is going to add a new dimension to City. Defensively, he is an optional defender, to put it kindly. His focus level, I think, is his biggest weakness. I think he can tackle, he can defend when he's focused, but his focus levels are consistently not up to par. And Nunes is for me is a stopgap, right? I don't trust Mateus Nunes at right back over a full season. I'm sorry, guys. So like I said, I think if everything goes right for City, if Haaland does another 25+ goal season, if Cherki from day one can really elevate his game and be the difference maker for City that we know he's capable of doing, if Foden can return to player of the season form that he was a season back, if Rodri returns to his best level, forget about second, guys. I think City could win the whole damn thing. But I think there are too many question marks, especially from a defensive point of view, that worry me about City. And again, I don't regard Arsenal's ceiling as highly as I do City's, but I think their floor is low enough, their defensive organization, their knowledge of the system as well too, that even in Arsenal's worst season, I still think they're hitting 82, 83 points. Now, they could definitely go higher than that, but I think their bare floor is higher than City's. And for that reason, and again, I'm not 100% sure on this, and there's still business to do. These guys might sign Rodrigo. These guys might sign Eze. Let's see how it kind of pans out the last few weeks. But for now, I'm going to put City here, and I'm going to put Arsenal here. Now, Arsenal have done good business this summer. They've brought in depth, Kepa as their backup, Norgard as a backup in defensive midfield. Madueke can play across the front line, but I think he's honestly coming in to play as a left winger. I think he's coming in to contest for that position. And Zubimendi, who I think is one of the most slept on signings of the window. I think he's coming in. He's an immediate replacement on Thomas Partey. I think he's going to be a great player in this league. And Victor Gyökeres up front. That's the big one, right? For years now, we have been lambasting the fact that Arsenal have gone into title races with Jesus up front, with Kai Havertz up front. Last season, Marino played minutes up there, and Nketiah was an option. And every pundit in this country has said Arsenal need a number 9, an established world-level number 9. Well, they hope to have done that in the form of Victor Gyökeres. Gyökeres is a risk, though, right? He is a risk. I don't care what anybody tells me. I'm not 100% sold on the guy. I'm not saying he's going to flop, but there's no guarantee that he absolutely tears the place up either. I'm willing to wait and see. By all means, he could be a 20-goal-a-season striker. But is that a guarantee? I'm not sure it is. I don't think we're looking at an Erling Haaland level goal scorer here in terms of like death taxes and he's scoring goals. I think he's going to have to accommodate, he's going to have to adapt to the way Arsenal play, and I think Arsenal are going to have to adapt to the way he plays. He's playing at a higher competition now. He's playing in a different league. He's playing in a different system. He's playing against tougher defenders. He's also playing with better players as well too, which is going to help him. But for me, that's a question mark. Let's see how he looks. I like the business they've done, and they're a better team last year than they are this year. I think they're also much better equipped to survive an injury crisis than they were last season. But the biggest disappointment for me with Arsenal this year. That's the word. I'm disappointed. I'm holding off being fully disappointed because they could still bring in a player in this position. But I looked at Arsenal last season, and honestly, for the last 2 years, and a big red flag for me is the lack of attacking X factor, especially off that left-hand side. Arsenal are a very heavily right side dominant team. Everything comes down the right. Saka. Everything comes down his side. The left-hand side is absolutely barren. Let's see what Madueke adds to that. But look, we need to be convinced by that guy. Honestly, Gyökeres and Madueke for me are risk signings. They could work out wonderfully. They could also be incredibly underwhelming. And I'm sorry, right? If Arsenal in the space of 6 months allow Kvaratskhelia to go to PSG, Eze to go to Spurs, and Rodrigo to go to Manchester City, I'm incredibly disappointed by Arsenal because any of those 3 players would change life for Arsenal. You sign any of those 3, and again, just like I said, City could propel up to here, I think Arsenal could as well too. But like I said, this is a prediction based on the time of recording. And at the time of recording, Arsenal have not strengthened that left-hand side enough in my eyes. They're missing a genius off the left that you can give the ball to, and he can unlock a defense just like that. They have that on the right with Saka. They don't have that on the left. They're a great team. They're well managed. They're incredibly good defensively, and they score goals as a team. But in those tight moments, in those moments where you need someone to step up and create a moment as an individual, I still don't feel like Arsenal have enough. I still feel like both City and Liverpool have more in that regard. They have more match winners than Arsenal. If I'm being honest with Arsenal as well too, right? Away from how they play as a team and what they've done in the window, there's a real fear for me with Arsenal that it might be growing a bit stale. It might just be getting a little bit stale. And I think this happens with football clubs sometimes, man. I think there's this idea that if you have a young team and they're really, really good, they have a divine right to just challenge for as long as the players are in their prime. So like, I remember when Arsenal kind of went on that crazy run and almost won the Premier League in 22-23. A lot of Arsenal fans were telling me, oh, we're poised to dominate the Prem for the next 6-7 years, right? Like, once this team kind of grows, we're going to be winning Premier Leagues as soon as City fall off. And they didn't. They didn't capitalize on the moment. And then Liverpool came in. And now even Liverpool look ahead of their development over Arsenal, even though Liverpool, when Arsenal were kind of coming up, had just finished 5th place that season. So I feel like the league is very fluid. It's always moving parts. Chelsea were, 12th the season Arsenal almost won the league, and now they look like they're on level footing with them. And I just feel finishing second 3 seasons in a row, a failure to have a really good start to this season where we look at Arsenal in October, November time, and they're maybe 5 points off the top, and they're hanging around 3rd or 4th, and the mood around the camp ain't great, and the football isn't amazing. I just feel like with Arsenal, it might boil over this season. That's not a guarantee. I could be very wrong here. But if they don't bring another body in, especially in that left-sided position, doesn't have to be even as a left winger, but just someone who plays on that left-hand side, I feel like Arsenal are in real danger of just going stale. And I think that's the last thing they want this season. This year has to be a year where it's almost like a refresh. It's not a reset. It's not a rebuild. It's we need to feel refreshed about Arsenal this year. I don't think any Arsenal fan wants to watch the Arsenal of last season, even where it just almost feels tedious watching the team. They're struggling to really get over the line in games. They're winning games. Again, like I said, they're tough to beat. It's not convincing. And I feel like Arsenal approached that last season. I understand there were injuries, but even before the injuries, to be honest with you, I felt like it was getting a little stale. And that's my biggest worry for Arsenal going into this year. Now, a big part of that is down to how Gyökeres comes into the league and plays, and Madueke, because I do think those two, in particular Gyökeres, really gives Arsenal something different that they didn't have before. Arsenal do not have a player like Gyökeres in their team. They don't have a center forward certainly like him. So if he's able to kind of bang from day one, that all of a sudden makes Arsenal feel a bit more fresh, a bit more new. It gets fans back on side. But I think at the moment, Arsenal are kind of entering the season with a lot of doubt about have they done enough to kind of close the gap. Because for me, it's very obvious what Arsenal are missing to get over the hump. It's not much. Honestly, they're not that far off. But my main worry for Arsenal this summer is, did they address it enough? They've added depth. They're a better team than they were last year. But what they were missing to get over the top last year, have they brought that into the team? Have they added it? At the moment, I don't think they have. I don't. And I think that's massively changed if they bring in Eze. And I think it would have been massively changed if they brought in Rodrigo. Just my opinion. At the moment, they have failed to do either. So I struggle to see how they get over the top. As I said, their floor dictates me putting them above City at the moment. But I'm not convinced in doing so, and I am certainly not convinced that they haven't done enough to finish above last year's league winners, and in my eyes, this year's as well too. Now, my prediction for Liverpool to win the league comes even without them signing Isak. I think if Isak comes to Liverpool, look, I think we're poised for a great title race. If Isak joins Liverpool, scrap that. I think they're winning the league by 7 to 10 points minimum. 7 to 10 points minimum. I think they're going to be comfortable league winners. Because at the end of the day, guys, right? Quality wins you titles. It does. Now, it has to work. It has to be balanced. We saw that with Real Madrid last season. We've seen that with PSG in the past. But ultimately, the rule stands kind of firm. The team with the best players, more often than not, wins the trophies. Arsenal were a great side the last few years. At the end of the day, there was a team that had Haaland and Rodri and Foden, and they won the league. At the end of the day last year, there was a team that had Salah and Van Dijk, and they won the league. If Liverpool add Alexander Isak to the side that they've already built, I'm sorry, I don't see any of these teams touching them. But even without Isak, I still don't think these sides have done enough to usurp them. I think it's going to be close. Without Isak, I think we're looking at a title race that goes to the last day. And I'm not going to disrespect City or Arsenal by saying they have no chance of finishing above Liverpool. Like I said, City, there's every chance they could. Arsenal, they bring in an Eze type of player the last few days of the window. They could very well finish up here as well too. But for now, I still don't think these guys have done enough. I think Liverpool have recruited very, very smartly. Kerkez and Frimpong are the new look fullbacks. They're very different to Robertson and Trent. And Florian Wirtz, I think it's a sign that people have almost forgotten about because of Isak mania. Isak is the name on everyone's tongue, but let's not forget Liverpool smashed the British transfer record fee to bring in one of the best players in the world. Florian Wirtz is a superstar in my eyes. One of the best players in this position. One of the best players in the game. He brings them a new look. Gives them a new edge. Brings them creativity from midfield. He brings them goals. He brings them moments. Brings them X factor from midfield that maybe they didn't have last season. And in Ekitike, I was talking about Newcastle. They failed to bring in all their... Ekitike was the main Isak signing they wanted. The main Isak replacement. Liverpool got him. And I think we've already seen of Ekitike. If they don't get Isak, it might not be the end of the world. This kid looks like a problem, man. In tight spaces, technical ability, link-up play, running channels, running at players, finishing. He seems to have it all. He seems to be a baby Isak. And at the end of the day, look, I'm seeing a lot of people replace them in their FPL team. Until I see it for 10, 11, 12 games straight of them playing below their standard, then maybe I'll believe it. But I'm sorry. Mohamed Salah is still Mohamed Salah. And Virgil van Dijk is still Virgil van Dijk. And in those two, are those the two best players in the Premier League? I think they might be. Rodri is a big contender for that. I get that. But at the moment, those are the two guys. Liverpool have arguably the two best players in the league. Those two on their own are going to win most games for Liverpool. And now you're adding the services of Florian Wirtz on top of it. You're adding the likes of Ekitike. And potentially a top 5 center forward in the world. If they bring in Isak, do they have 3 of the top 5 players in the league? Or at least 3 of the top 6 or 7. Add Wirtz in that as well too. Is that 4 out of the top 10? Slot as well too. Incredibly versatile. Incredibly level-headed. Very good manager. He proved it last season. If I'm playing devil's advocate, what could stop Liverpool from winning the league this year? Could it be depth in attack? Could it be a lack of balance? Last season, a big thing for them was Sobotlai's press from the front. You are already removing that presence by dropping him deeper because Wirtz now occupies those positions. Sobotlai's running power and ability to lead the press from the very front was huge for Liverpool. Could his absence from that hurt them? Maybe. Could Frimpong being much more of a natural wing back, right? Like he really holds the width high and wide. Very different to Trent in that regard. That's going to move Salah closer to goal, away from kind of the wing where he likes to square players up. Does that impact Salah? Maybe. Does bringing in Isak hurt Ekitike in terms of how effective he can be? I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Look, there's a reason why I think City and Arsenal could win the league if they don't sign Isak. And Liverpool are not a perfect team. I get all that. I still think they are the team to beat. But if I'm being honest, are there ways I could see them maybe falling off? Yes, of course. But do I think it's going to happen? Do I think these 3 have enough to overcome them? Potentially, but I'm not going to hedge my bets on it. And if they bring in Isak, there's no doubt in my mind. Liverpool will win number 21. But I think we're in, without Isak, for a fascinating title race. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think. Again, I'm not 100% confident on this. And I told you I hate these videos. I absolutely despise them because I think so much about football is watching what happens, right? And analyzing that. Making predictions, a lot of it is blind luck. A lot of it is hope. A lot of it is faith. Like, a lot of it is just prediction. That's not really my bag, but this is what I'm going for. I'm going to make another video after the transfer window, after September, because I think this could look a whole lot different. I think United could potentially look different. I think one of these bottom teams could maybe make a signing or two that leapfrogs them out of the bottom three. Maybe City adds someone, maybe Arsenal adds someone, maybe Liverpool bring in Isak, maybe Spurs bring in those attacking reinforcements. Everything all of a sudden looks different. But as of today, and it's what, the 14th of August, Premier League season starts tomorrow. This is what I'm going for. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Like, share, subscribe. Take it easy on me, right? It's just predictions. This could all end up being absolutely spot on and I look like a genius. It could all end up being absolutely wrong and I look like an idiot. That's the name of the game. Like, share, subscribe. Almost at 80,000. And I'll see you guys very, very soon. The Premier League's almost back. I'm so excited. Let's go. Peace.